Good morning, ladies. How are you? And good morning to everybody who weathered the storms to be here with us in person. And happy Equity Day. I want to start by thank yous. And I actually write them down because inevitably I forget the most important person and have to go back. So I want to start with thanking Terri Kondos, who started this conversation about 6 weeks ago on Equity Days coming up. And Equity Day, just for context, is a celebration of the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, which gave the majority of women the right to vote. It was decades later before all women of color, got the access to vote in 1965, which is a little too close to my birth year for comfort. Just saying. So Terry's like, we can't let this pass. We've got to do something. So we thought, why not a live stream? Why not proclamations? Why not op-eds?
Why not biscuits?
Why not biscuits? So, and I wanted to just set a little bit of that context to say the League of Women Voters, Manatee, Sarasota, the Women's Resource Center, Through Women's Eyes, our FUNducation. There's other organizations that are doing amazing work too. AAUW, Sarasota Women's Alliance, other organizations that are focused on uplifting women and creating opportunity. So we only had 6 weeks this year, but next year, save the date. We're going to be at the Grove and Lakewood Ranch, and it's going to be bigger, better, and amazing. So with that said, METV, thank you for being a great community partner and live streaming and giving us the opportunity to record this so we can share it. The best news about that, any data we share, the links to all of our websites, everybody can go and access that at a later date, so don't worry about taking notes. I want to thank the panelists, but then we have our secret panelist who's sitting in the back row, as usual, Deborah Chapman, who helped us with our run of show, etc. Thank you very much. And then Mandy Domer and Ann Carter, Yvette Gonzalez. Where's Yvette? Is she out front? Aspen, the whole Sarasota team getting this space ready. Lillian Elliott, my director of operations, who I'm searching for. Right there, right in front of me. Thank you for what your team did in getting everything together. We really appreciate it. My favorite thing about Deborah, too, she scripts me so I can go off script, and she loves it. So let's talk about August 26th. So it is Equality Day, and it is a celebration of all of the work that was done to pass the 19th Amendment, expanding the right for women to vote. Congress actually made it a day. Was it 1973 or 76? 73. Gotta love the League of Women Voters on it. So it was really important in this conversation to celebrate and acknowledge all of the work that has been done, but we really wanted to focus on what's left to do, what's the status of women today, and there's some eye rolls already. So, and what opportunities do we have to move the conversation forward? So I'm setting context, and then I'm handing it over with questions, so you only have me for a couple more minutes to talk data, because who doesn't love data? Brent's like, I love it. Let's talk local. So regionally, the United Way and United Way Suncoast, one of our partners, does a great job of sharing information on what are the realities for families in surviving in our community. So how much money does it really take to live? And the reality is for Manatee County, 42% of households live below a sustainable budget. 42%. Of that number, single female head of households with a child, 75%. Sarasota, so much better in Sarasota, right? Right? I'm going to share a shocking statistic. I got that out. Of Sarasota that I just saw when I looked at the updated information. So Sarasota's 43% of households live under a sustainable budget, and single women, head of household with a child, anybody want to guess? 87. Okay, well that's going to make this anticlimactic, Paula. But close. 78%. And that is a 10% increase in 2 years. It was 68% at the last update, so I think that that's important. I don't know if you all are aware, but it feels like everything's politicized these days. What toothpaste do you use? What is this? Where are you getting your information? Where's the data coming from? I mean, we're set to question everything. So let's not look at the data. Let's just look around at the people we're serving every day. Let's look at the fact that we have an affordable housing issue, transportation, childcare. We see our friends and neighbors struggling, so let's say, okay, data's fine, but we see the realities of what's happening. So what we're going to solve today, Michael, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of these barriers and what are our opportunities. And the number one opportunity is us engaging in conversation, listening to each other, and figuring out ways we can tackle some of these issues that change the narrative for everyone in our community, but we're unabashedly about what is the impact on women because we're a women's organization. So while this is about women, it's really about all of us and what we want for our community. So set the stage. Everybody good? I know. So Scott Osborne, they went out of order in the seating. I have had the pleasure of getting to know you and through our podcast and other things. You really are such a wealth of information on gender equity. And so I always like to just set the stage of education on what is gender equity and what have you seen as some of the trends?
Sure, thank you. And I would first ask everybody, what is gender equity to you? What are we going to measure? What are we going to look at? It's such a broad spectrum. Some people would say reproductive rights. Other people would look at pay equity. Other people would look at housing, etc. So I want to set the stage by saying gender equity is a whole bunch of these things. Those of us who study it put it into 4 baskets. One is health. Do we have parity in healthcare? Another is economic. Do we have parity in terms of gender pay or assets? A third is political parity. Do we have parity, rough equivalency in our political representation? And the fourth is education. Those are the 4 baskets when people study globally over time. We are doing great in 2 of them. You can probably guess which 2, more or less, education and healthcare. There's some backsliding, there's some issues, but education and healthcare, we have rough parity. It's our economy, our economic parity, and our political parity. So when people say, what should we focus on? I always say, it's those 2. And there are many ways we could focus on them, but that's really where our attention needs to be spent. And let me just give you 2 quick examples, because I hope I have time. I really like to look at root causes for those things. So if on our political parity, we are capped at about 1/3 of our elected representatives. We've obviously never had a female president in the U.S. All of our state legislatures, our House, our Senate, we really struggle to get past 1/3 of representation. One of the biggest issues, and I know others will talk about it, I think, Terri, one big issue in that is socialization. Socialization is a huge theme for me. Most people see a leader just in their core, in their implicit bias, they see a leader as having these masculine qualities. Someone who's taller, someone who dominates the room, someone who speaks more loudly. This is what people see. Poll after poll after poll shows that's what they see as a leader. So I'm putting that out there because I want you to think about how do we combat those kind of subliminal beliefs. There's voter reform, there's many other things, but there's a lot of implicit beliefs that we need to really work on to make progress on some of these things.
And I have to go a little backwards.
Yes.
I need to say, we did the little intro before we started taping. So who is Scott Osborne?
Oh, thank you. Scott Osborne is a gender equity advocate. I'm also president of Through Women's Eyes, which is a local Sarasota Manatee gender equity organization. Among other things, we run a film festival because we believe that media has a huge influence on how we see people. So we run a film festival, but I've been doing other gender equity work for many years.
Great, thank you. I realized I'm like, I forgot to tee that up. What we're going to do is I want to get each of you to kind of answer the first question, and then I want to come back and kind of talk through, because there's going to be themes that are woven together through all of this. But before I move on to Neirda, one of the things that we don't talk about is the gender wage gap. And there's the thought of, why would I ever hire somebody at a different wage, a man or a woman? And I would never do that. The reality is it exists, and it increased for the first time in 20 years at the last report. So there's lots of things that go into that we'll talk about. But when we talk about the realities, again, that's a reality of where it is. So, Neirda, can you please introduce yourself, and why are you joining us today? For lots of good reasons.
My name is Neirda Thompson-Pemberton, and I'm the founder and executive director of FUNducation. We are a registered non-for-profit organization on a mission to expose, engage, and inspire our youth to be the innovators of tomorrow through education. And if you want to help me out, it's STEAM, which stands for S, Science, T,
Technology,
E,
Engineering,
A, Arts, M, full steam ahead. My background is actually in civil engineering. And as a civil engineer, I was voluntold. Woo! Is that a female civil engineer in the house? Rare. Good to see you. We'll talk. I was voluntold, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Hey, we need you to go talk to some kids about it. Yeah, I'll go. Let's go talk to some kids. Grabbed a set of plans, went to the school to go talk to the kids. And I kicked off what I thought was an easy question. So what is an engineer? Crickets. They didn't even know what an engineer was, which was surprising to me, because to me, backbone of innovation, the being able to understand infrastructure and, the simple things, clean water. How many people were able to take a shower today besides the rain outside, or go to the restroom, or you're welcome, civil engineering, infrastructure, right? They didn't know. And so then there was a spark of interest when we told them. And then they asked a question that kills me every time. Also, what classes will we have to take if we want to be an engineer? I was like, well, there's going to be some math involved. There's some math. There's some high-level math, a little bit of calculus. Some, different. You try to say it in a whisper, but it doesn't matter. They hear it, and as soon as they hear that, they shut down. And it was kind of upsetting to me, that just because something is difficult or that the kids didn't want to do it. And then you take it to the level of our girls. It was even worse in our girls, where it's not so much they didn't know, they just had no interest, or didn't think it was for them, or they thought it was for the boys. Like if you go into a room or an opportunity where you can do something hands-on, or they would literally leave. I've had girls actually tell me, oh, I walked in there and there were a bunch of boys in the room, so I didn't want to do it. I said, what? I said, that's when you plant your roots. Are you kidding me? Like, that's where an opportunity for you to, I believe that women are naturally wired for it. Present gentlemen excluded. You guys are great. But we're naturally wired for it, natural problem solvers. There's no reason why we can't do it. So what are those, implicit or subliminal messages that are telling our girls that we can't or shouldn't be there, or there are certain fields that aren't for us? Is it exposure? We're having a beautiful conversation earlier. We just got to get them early. And she was thinking elementary school. I said, elementary? Get me in the womb. I want to be in there when that first introduction, where life begins, which is a separate conversation. Right. But letting them know that you are capable of anything and everything that you choose to do, regardless of your gender, because this is a lot heavier lift. By the time these girls are not even high school, middle school, we're losing them. So So that's why FUNducation's here.
I love it. And Scott's like socialization. I don't know if anybody was watching her body language. She's like, yes, preaching to the choir. I know. So Nancy, speaking of reproductive rights, speaking of the womb. So Nancy, we had the pleasure of getting to know each other through working on advocating for the Fourth Amendment. Or the constitutional amendment. So it was a pleasure, and I'm excited for you to share your perspective. So introduce us to Nancy.
My name is Nancy Hughes. I'm the chair of the Reproductive Rights Action Team for the League of Women Voters of Manatee County. And before I retired in Florida, I worked for more than 20 years in Washington, D.C. for health policy organizations. So this issue of reproductive rights is very important to me. And when you hear the words reproductive rights, I want you to think of the full spectrum of care. Everything from not getting pregnant to being pregnant to facing that decision of possibly having to terminate a pregnancy. And Ashley asked me to talk about the economic issues of it. We know that access to reproductive rights does have a profound impact on women. It leads to economic stability. Because if women have access to reproductive rights, they're able to plan their pregnancy, plan their childcare, invest in their careers, and pursue higher education. We know that 67% of women with young children are currently in the labor workforce outside of the house. So it's very important for them to be able to control their reproductive system. Florida, as you know, is one of 19 states in this country which has a ban on abortion at some point during the first trimester. There are some exemptions to the ban, but to meet those exceptions is next to impossible. The economic and social consequences to our society are also profound. According to one study, the economic cost on an annual basis is $170 billion. That's billion with a B. And that's because women are out of the workforce, or they're going out and into the workforce, and as they do, their wages are lower. And of course, that leads to financial instability and poverty. States with abortion bans are also seeing a lower rate of women coming into the workforce compared to a national average. Employers in abortion ban states are having a problem with both attracting staff and retaining staff. In fact, there was a study that was done earlier this year. 1 in 5 young people planning to have a child in the next decade have either left an abortion state or know somebody who has left an abortion state. These are valuable employees just starting out in their careers. And I can't help but also point out that abortion bans affect women of every political stripe. There's a congresswoman from Gainesville. She had a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy last year. She was initially denied an abortion. The reason is the physicians were very concerned about the abortion ban here in Florida, and they did not want to risk possible criminal prosecution. She eventually got her procedure. She was a lucky one. Think of the thousands of women who've had to leave Florida in order to get the reproductive care that they need. So yes, we need to ensure that women have access to the full range of reproductive care because it's good for them, it's good for our society.
Thank you. That is sobering statistics. Now, Terri, we're going to transition to you and talk a little bit about some of the work that the League's doing, what you're doing with voter information and engagement, and which also leads to, I just want to repeat Scott's statistic of it really is less than a third of representation or female. And it's lower at the federal level. It gets slightly higher. It goes from 27% to 30% at state and municipal. So we have lots of opportunity for growth. That's the good news, right? I know.
Okay, so my name is Terri Kondos. I spent about 38 years in the Department of Defense in the D.C. area and in postings overseas. And when I came to Florida, became very attracted to the work of the League of Women Voters. So I currently serve as the vice president of the Manatee League of Women Voters and on the board of the Florida chapter of the League of Women Voters. So the League, as you know, and we've talked about this repeatedly, we are a political organization, but we are nonpartisan. And so that's important to us because we support all voters and have included men in our membership since 1972. The League does not support candidates, but we do take positions on issues. And many of the issues that our panel here has talked about already this morning are things that we care about greatly: education, reproductive rights, healthcare. But I would say that fundamentally all of these things get addressed by access to the polls, right? Because we can't fix all the things. We can't fix the laws that affect our reproductive rights. We can't fix many of the laws that affect our economic opportunities or the disadvantaged. We can't affect what's happening in our school with technical education if we can't influence our government, our school boards, our local government, our state government, our federal government. And so that really is why we focus on that in the League. What's interesting is that women have been the largest proportion of voters in our country since about 1980. It was growing all of the time between 1920 and 1980, but since 1980, every single election, women have outnumbered, both proportionally and in raw numbers, the number of male voters in our country. But as Scott said, we are disproportionately not represented in our government, right? So the numbers, a third, Ashley just said, there are some pockets like mayors and governments in big cities tend to have more women, but on average, it never gets much above 30-something, and in many cases, it's 20-something. Well, why is that? Because research shows that when women run, they are equally successful compared to male counterparts. So it's not an issue of a systemic bias against women who are running for office. The problem is women are not running. So, and that happens in two forms. It happens in the form of they're not recruited, they're not solicited by the parties, by the apparatus that brings candidates to us on the polls. So that's one side of the problem. But what contributes to that is that women don't see themselves as qualified. So if you interview what sociologists and political scientists look at as potential candidates, people who are leaders, people who are in various positions, have various education, what they will tell you is that of all of the men that are in that group, a large proportion, like 60-something% of them, see themselves as qualified and fitting in that role. But many fewer women believe and see themselves as qualified to run for those positions. So it really is, going back to the socialization, it's something that's kind of died into us as we go through life. How do we see ourselves? But I was heartened to understand that figure that if we do run, we're almost always equally successful as men. So it really is about helping women to see themselves, just like we have challenges with women seeing and girls seeing themselves in technical roles and STEM roles. We have challenges of getting women to see themselves as fitting and being in the room when we talk about representation and being elected officials.
So I think this ties back a little, Scott, of where we started this conversation. And I'm curious of where care economy comes into women choosing or not being able to step forward in
care economy is huge. I also want to come back to the socialization theme because it comes up a lot, but the care economy underscores almost everything. It is the reason why, it's one reason, why women often don't run for office, often have to shift themselves into a profession that is more conducive to their lifestyle, step out of work for a time. We hear a lot about the gender pay gap. Many people know it's about 80 to 180 cents to the dollar for white women, much less for women of color. The gender asset gap is about 50%. So what that means is accumulated assets over a lifetime. Women accumulate about half of what men do. It's 55 cents to the dollar. What does that say? That says that over a lifetime, women have had to step out of jobs. The care burden is really a motherhood penalty, we call it, and I know there's care that's not just motherhood, but as soon as you see women engage in motherhood and a care responsibility, bingo, they're off their career path, they're off their earnings path, they have to shift out. So that's a huge, huge issue. As long as we have unpaid care, which is seen as women's work, which takes us back to socialization. Why do we all see that as women's work? This is the way we've been raised early from the womb. That is what we see as women's work. And we take that on as unpaid care. So that's incredibly difficult until we can start to shift that and until we can start to shift men's mindsets that care is acceptable. Let me talk 1 second about socialization. What do you think men from very early on are socialized most? What does it mean to be a man? What are really some key things? Anyone? Just not be like a girl. Anything that's feminine, you eschew it. What else? Anything? No cry. Provider. To be dominant, to be in charge of settings, that they've got it, okay? That's what men are socialized to be. I know there's exceptions. We're talking generalities, but in general, very, very early. I work with a lot of educators. They see this popping up preschool, first grade. You'll see little groups of children. The men know, the boys know. They kind of run it, and the girls start to step back very, very early. What do you think most women are socialized as the most important thing for them? Most important. Close, taking care, but there's another one that I heard in this room probably 15 times when I walked in, and I love you all, but I heard it. Appearance.
I knew it.
Appearance. The number of, again, let me say I love you all. I heard about wrinkles. I heard about hair. I heard about do I look okay? I heard, oh, you look wonderful. Women are socialized from very early on. That's most important. So I ask you, if we all do that to each other, and then we criticize the media for picking on a candidate's hair or clothing, what are we doing? Until we can shift that. And again, you want to look nice, be my guest. But that is huge. And then we expect to be taken seriously when we all have absorbed that the most important thing to us is appearance. So not to get on everybody, but that's an important part of socialization.
Have you
Yes.
Have you seen that campaign where they ask, I think it's male athletes, the questions
Yes.
of appearance and whatever, and
Yes.
they're just like,
Where are you coming from?
Yes.
Where are you coming from? So, care burden, many of us feel is very important. I would argue it's very important for everyone. There's a fascinating organization called Equimundo that works a lot on shifting men's attitude. But as long as boys are socialized that anything female, anything girly is like, not with a 10-foot pole, you don't go there. They learn that very early. How do we shift their mindset on care? If care is seen as women's work and boys are socialized that they don't touch anything, I'll say girly, how do we shift that narrative? So men, a recent poll that there was a great headline that men are for pay equity, vacuuming, not so much. What does that tell us? Abstractly, they might love it if their wives or partners make as much. Vacuuming? Not really. I'm sorry, Ashley, I may have gotten off your question, but...
No, but you're always so good at looking at being the devil's advocate and looking at the whole perspective, because I would dare say there's way more of this that goes towards women, but for the men who want to be homemakers, caregivers, decide to be stay-at-home dads, there's backlash for them as well.
Huge.
Right?
It's very, very hard. It's what we sometimes call the playground effect. That when men are caregivers of young children, picture the playground, picture the carpool line. Okay, it's overwhelmingly female, and they will not socialize with, I'll just say, the dad. It's very, very hard. There's a stigma. They see it negatively. If women might go to the playground, the carpool, and then do whatever, take care of small children, have coffee, they're not going to invite the male. That's seen as taboo. You don't spend the morning with the dad, with your kids. That's really seen as violating norms. And women perpetuate this. So if we want that change, we have to really see how we can shift our attitudes about welcoming men into care work, for example. I'll give you one other quick statistic that let me ask you, what do you think that is one of the top things that women look for in dating partners in men? So this is heterosexual women looking for men. What do you think one of the top things they want to look for? Characteristic.
Are we being shallow?
We're being honest. Because, dating apps are great because you've got a lot of data from dating apps. So they
Steady
can see,
employment?
Steady employment, possibly, but there's height.
Is it right?
They want a man who's tall. Now, I ask you, is tall going to do the vacuuming? Tall is not. And women have shown this. So, we're all part of this social change. So we got to look honestly at some of these issues.
This is so revealing because my husband is 6'5", but it was other stuff, I promise.
We got to think about
that was a bonus that he was 6'5".
You talk to short men and about how they feel discriminated against by women and men. It's a powerful thing. So just think about those social issues.
He cooks a mean salmon.
Cooking's the big thing. I think cooking's the big thing. So, Neirda, I want to kind of shift to you because I think that we can all agree that economic security that's rooted in our foundations of strength. So if you don't have that economic security, all of the things become bigger and more overwhelming. So in the work you do, in recruiting more women into STEAM, higher paying wages, different job opportunities, what are some of the opportunities you have as you're recruiting, and what are some of the barriers you run into?
Well, you kicked off with the data, and I love the data, but that data comes from somewhere. And from where I sit, where we are with our girls, and I don't know if everyone else is feeling this, whether you a daughter, a niece, a granddaughter, that type of security and doesn't even seem to be a priority for our girls. I don't understand it, why it is not a priority, so we try to lead with that. But again, my God, did you start something? Is it because in terms of them creating that security for themselves, instead they're set up to find it in men? So they are focused on looking nice or, being the softest or the most feminine. And I'm going to say a lot of the STEAM jobs are not, or are they defined as not? So if you see a female engineer, what picture comes in your head? Like, what are you thinking when you think of female engineer, right? How many people are seeing hard hats, maybe a few chin hairs? Let's be honest, right? But if you say nurse, right, which is still a STEAM field, but that's where most of our then caregiver, right? Like, so put your little uniform and take care of Betty Sue or whatever, right? Not out there calculating the rainfall from all this rain so they can figure out how big a pipe I have to put in the ground to take care of this rainwater. That's engineering. Right? So is it all of these, so we are in there trying to change the narrative, the mindset, and then it's generational. Because then if you do look at some of the kids that we work with, underserved, especially in the single, mom homes, where that mom is just trying to get things done that day, from paying the bills, feeding them, taking care of them. So the thought of actually investing, you graduate from high school, but then now you've got to put in, 4 years of college. That's if you don't decide to go for a higher level degree. Who's got that kind of time when I've got to feed my child today? And then our girls are seeing that, or even our boys too, are seeing that. So they're about the hustle instead of the thrive or the long term. Right? So now we've got to go in there and tell them, these are the fields that can provide for you and your family, but you've got to invest the time. I know that right now you have to go get a job so you can help put food on the table today, but I'm telling you, no, stay in school and study instead. But what's the immediate need or the concern? So battling those narratives, having those conversations, knowing the data, but the realities. So battling that, but all we can do, Even when I walk into a room today, and I didn't know when I was doing it, I am a female, Black, Haitian American civil engineer. How many of those do you know? How many do you know? How many? But show hand. You know what I mean? So even when I walk in the room and I start talking to them, I'm all right. Remember, I married a 6'5" man. I got to take that in, figure out what happened. When I talk and walk into a room, some of the looks on these girls' faces, like they can't even believe I did that. And I'm looking at them like, what? I wanted to be an engineer. I became one. So we're battling things on so many fronts, but we're trying to control the narrative and give them the experiences that will hopefully change that mindset, the generational, things they've been experiencing, the things they see every day, So that's all we can do is just try to change that narrative and that mindset.
And it's interesting, and this is one of my favorite topics. My staff, you will see them start to nod off momentarily. But one of the barriers we talk about, and it's part of the caregiving economy, is benefit cliffs. So women, families who are working but getting childcare subsidies, because does everyone know, and if not, you will now, childcare is the number 2 expense in a household, right behind a mortgage. It is extremely expensive. And so the child care subsidies help keep people working and going, but a nominal increase as someone's going to school, they get a new certification, can knock them out of the system. So they lose the benefit. Then they can't afford the child care, so they can't afford to keep working or going to school. So they have to make decisions that no one wants to make. And when you lay it out that way, no one wants that. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're the employer, the employee. So that's one of the things that through the Elevating Women's Voices at the Women's Resource Center, and then the work that all of these women are doing, is trying to change some of those narratives and opportunities to expand access or to expand the ability to get a stronger education or certification or fill in the blank, to have that financial security. And we have to thank brave partners like the Bishop Parker Foundation investing in Elevating Women's Voices to let us have this. Goodwill Industries willing to put their name on an Equality Day event. Thank you very much. And it starts with some of those, it's as easy as conversation and the willingness. Terri, I'm going to switch to you for a second, because I think another thing girls and women are kind of just taught from an early age is to get along, go along. I don't want to cause any waves. I miss those classes, but I've heard that they've been very successful with others. And we're seeing some of those trends in women being involved in politics and engaged in, it seems gross.
Yeah, this is a day, the 26th of August, when we should be celebrating the legacy of the women who fought for us to get the right to vote. But, sadly, on many of the fronts that we're talking about, not only have we never truly achieved full equity in these various facets of our lives, but we are feeling like we're backsliding, right? We're feeling like we're backsliding. We're feeling like even the rights that we have achieved are being taken away from us in more or less subtle ways. And so I think all women are feeling that right now. And then, specific to what I care about, which again, I think is the magic bullet that keeps open our ability to address all of these things, our ability to vote equally is being attacked, right? So a couple of big things that unfortunately, and I have to sadly say that the League of Women Voters, at least right now, is calling this Women's Inequality Day because of this backsliding. There are some really scary things that are happening. So let's even just talk about the threats to vote by mail and to access to the ballot box. Women it's horrible for everybody, but women are disproportionately affected because of the care roles that we have. If we can't vote by mail, if we can't early vote, we don't get to the ballot box, and women disproportionately fill those roles and need that flexibility in our options to vote. Similarly, think about, sorry guys, we're just picking on the guys all day today, but women statistically live longer. Right, so if you can't vote by mail, it's women, elderly women, who are having a very important mechanism to vote taken away from them. So all of these attacks on vote by mail are horrific, but the most scary one right now for us is the SAVE Act, which was passed by the House in Washington, D.C., has not been passed by the Senate, thank goodness, but it's a true concern because it puts in place new and absolutely unnecessary barriers, requirements for providing identification in order to be a voter. And there are an estimated 69 million American women who lack the paperwork that reflects their current name. And that's a big part of what the SAVE Act would do, is it would require you to have these forms of education where your current name matches these key documents that you would have to have. And for 69 million women, that would be a challenge. So it's
and what's the
it's
number
quite
one
sad.
reason for that?
The number one, because people, again, societally, we're trained, and many of us still statistically do, change our names when we get married or have other things in our lives that cause us to go back and forth between different names. And the SAVE Act just goes right at that, right, and makes it really challenging. Very easy for a man. Every document he's ever had in his life is going to have the same name on it, no problem. And then economically also, Ashley, with the challenges that you talked about of how many women are struggling financially disproportionately, one of the key pieces of identification that the SAVE Act wants you to have is a passport. It costs money to get a passport. How many people are going to carve out money to get a passport and then change their name on their passport, if they change their name, in order to meet these requirements? So it really is quite troubling. It is so important that we have access to the ballot box, and it just seems like it's coming on all fronts. Right, these various challenges to our ability to have a voice in government, be in government, and it's not just about voting, it's about addressing all of these issues that we face in our lives and our societies. And really, it's that ability to change and affect laws that is key to us hopefully holding ground, never mind continuing to make progress.
So one of the things that we talked about on our podcast, A Woman's Voice, where we talk about things that are impacting women in a nonpartisan way, because educating yourself is so important. And the things, especially with bills, they're so dense, they're complicated, they're purposefully, I think, made that way. But one of the things that we keep hearing is, we're protecting the vote, voter fraud, the emotional aspect of choice, the kind of emotional blackmail that happens that get people fearful. And the reality with voting and voter fraud, is
that it doesn't exist.
It's really nominal. Yeah. So, right?
Yeah, I mean, really important point. And, all of these issues are important, but this is the anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And, yes, to your point, if you talk to any supervisor of elections here in the state of Florida, where there's a lot of fear-mongering about voter fraud, and most of the supervisors of elections in Florida are Republicans, they will all tell you that statistically speaking, there is no voter fraud. It is what those people in those positions do every day, is make sure that the voter rolls are correct and that votes are accurate and that they have the right processes in place to check them. So, yeah, I mean, fear-mongering on so many fronts, whether it has to do with a woman's right to choose or whether it has to do with voter fraud, this culture and this leaning towards making people afraid of everything. But to your point, one thing that people should absolutely not be afraid of across the country, but also in Florida, is voter fraud, because statistically it does not exist.
So I think that that's a great spot to kind of take a break to see if we have any questions from audience, and we have lots more to talk about. So if no one has a burning question, we'll continue. But I know this crowd. There's got to be at least one question. Do we have any questions or anything we haven't touched on yet? Is everybody being shy? Okay, so I'm like, that seems weird.
I'm just surprised that no one has addressed domestic violence.
So she's surprised that no one's addressed domestic violence, and that is a really valid point and another big part of economic security. And certainly women are way overrepresented in the people that experience domestic violence. And it is, I think we go back to the language and how we talk about things. And I'm of an age, and there's a couple of you here with me, that we started working when it was normal for inappropriate comments, off color, sexualized, etc., that we just took as, oh, it's just, locker room talk or whatever it is. So I think seeing that shift and violence against women, not only in the States, but across the world. And Scott, I don't know if you have any info on this and the work you've done internationally as well.
Yeah, we do see it certainly across the world. I would go back to two things, that this is it's both a systemic issue in terms of legal systems, enforcement of legal systems. It's also very much a social issue. Men are trained to be dominant. They're trained to be economic providers. If we had economic parity, that gives a great deal of power and equity in a household. I would also say, which is not at all to excuse where we are, I think where we are is a difficult place, but we have had patriarchal systems running the world for about 12,000 years. That's the rough estimate. We don't know exactly, but that is the dominant method of organization of the globe for 12,000 years. In the past 50 to 60 years, we have just seen light years of change. I know the voting 100 years ago, but just light years of change in 50 years, where just in the U.S., no-fault divorces came in. Women could have control over their marital status in a way that was unheard of before. Widespread birth control in general came in. Huge changes. Title IX. That's why women are in education today, is Title IX. They're in workplaces. We've had secularization. Religions have declined. So we've just had these phenomenal changes. Women have access to banking and credit. Our mothers and grandmothers didn't have it. So in the span of 12,000 years, we've just had this tsunami of changes, which are great. But people don't change that quickly. People are afraid of change. So we have to remember that. If we want to make changes, we have to understand the problem. We have to understand who we're working with. People are afraid of change. Traditional structures have a strong hold. That's religions, it's systems. We have to really look at the root causes and change people. People build these systems. We have to change people's mindsets, and that's slow work. Gender equity is social change. It really is. It's social change. Social change can be slow. So this is not to be copacetic, it's not to be complacent, but it's to take the long view. We've had phenomenal changes very recently, and we've had thousands of years of the same systems being in place.
I feel Nancy has something.
Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. I would also add that we also have to be on the outlook for what seems like simple changes which have profound impact. What came to my mind listening to you talk, Scott, is about the laws to make a fetus a person. In some states, Texas is one, what they are trying to do is set up a system whereby a man who has impregnated a woman, the woman has an abortion, the man would then have the right to go after her for murder. So we have to be on the outlook all the time, on our toes, for even the most simple change in the law. Here in Florida, the personhood legislation in 2025 nearly passed. And it was sort of hidden in the legislation. So.
Well, and I think that this is going to be a little transition from that perspective. And I think having the conversations and taking the emotion out and taking the judgment out and being able to talk through, because I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding of what some of the realities are and the impact. And we look at unintended consequences versus intended consequences, and not being able to have conversation and determine what really is best for how we're living. And I think one of the things is it's shown that when women are in leadership, when women are stronger economically, Scott, this is your quote that I'm taking. I mean, it lifts all of society. And that's a good thing, right? So why are we afraid of it? Does anybody want to take why we're... Uh-oh.
Yeah, can I... So this is on reproductive rights because there's been, and actually Danielle I'm sure would know more about this, but there's been moves to destigmatize this. Until we get out of the silo, as we say, it takes two to make a baby. Until we get men equally involved in this, and until women destigmatize menstruation, birth control, abortion. Over just my lifetime, there have been movements to try to get women to be candid about abortions. From, I think, 1/4 to 1/3 of women have had abortions in the U.S. Is that... Oh, so if all of those women, our sisters, our mothers, ourselves, were like, yeah, sure, you're right, that's me. Think how that would destigmatize it. Think how that would shift people's attitudes toward it. But many, many women still absorb that sense of shame. They absorb the notion that this is stigmatized, that this is a women's issue. So I've had an abortion. You want to hear about it? I'll talk to you about it. Okay, we don't have to brand, really we need to be candid about some of these things, and we need to break down some of that self-absorbed stigma to normalize it, to get some changes, or we're not going to make social change progress.
So I'm just going to try to loop a couple of things that we're talking about and raise another issue that we have with regard to women and all voters having a voice in our government. We all obviously saw last year the attempt to have the Amendment 4 pass and the effect that that's had on women in our state, which Nancy spoke to earlier. How did that even become an option? Now, of course, many in this room would have liked to have seen a different outcome, but how did it even become something on the ballot that you could vote one way or the other? It was through citizens' initiatives, right? And so that's another thing that when we talk about how difficult it is to achieve change in society, whether it's in education or whether it's in economic systems or whether it's in reproductive rights, a primary method for many years now in Florida has been the use of citizens' petitions. And in the last 2, 4, 6 years, we've seen that process attacked. And so that really, because again, this is foundational to everything that affects our society, it's something that the League of Women Voters here in Florida has really pushed against hard. With litigation and with engagement to try to attack is because it is a very important mechanism that it doesn't exist in all states, but in a Florida context, this has been one of the major ways that change has been achieved in our state. And the ability to get citizens' petitions and to have voters have a more direct path to getting change in an area where they don't see change happening with the representatives and senators, that also is being eroded. And so in addition to fighting the erosion with vote by mail, in addition to fighting at the national level SAVE, we really still have to not give up on the fact that those new levels and challenges to voters' petitions have been put in place. We need to keep pressing to have those repealed and changed so that the voice of voters in Florida on all of these issues we don't have a major tool taken away from us in the process.
Agreed. One of the things that, Neirda, you mentioned it, because we do have systems, we do have lots of systemic, implicit bias, all those things, but we also have our will and what we're doing and the choices we're making. I think about this at this time of year when I chose to fail out of my first year of college just for fun. I'm fine. It's worked out. But, so we do have our piece, and I think you mentioned it, of being the only person who looks like you in a room. What would be your advice for young women and young girls of how you approach your comfort level there?
I almost feel like I'm going to say it. Like a Nike commercial, just do it. Yeah. Like I don't know if it's grit. Do you learn it? For me, maybe I was lucky. I can remember my mom, coming to this country as a Haitian woman in the traditional role of wife, which was not the role she thought it was going to be. So from being a homemaker to getting her first job against the norms of being a Haitian wife, and then going from that job first at a fast food restaurant, then as a secretary, and today she's a nurse. Hi, Mom. So seeing that, for me maybe, I knew, that it was okay to want more or do more. So is it the things that they see? Can you teach grit? Can we actually teach a girl that has been exposed her whole life to being subservient or to want more and be willing to work for it, right? Is that it's so interesting, and every girl is different, every situation is different. So me, it's just constantly saying, why not, actually? So if I'm in a room and there are girls and boys and we're both doing the same thing, but the girl's kind of leaning back, I have to tell the boy to stand down and let the girl try. And then still fighting with the girl to even try to do it. So I came in to try to help, and I gave you the space to do something, and you're still fighting me to do it. So how do you curtail that? Like where, So I think it's still creating that space and the opportunity and speak to power, right? And then when I am in those rooms, even when I'm not in those rooms, I think it's in the way that I carry myself and the decisions that I make, and, knowing that it may impact somebody in that space. It really is. So even if it's from potentially dealing in a room that's predominantly male, which I did as an engineer, but I went in and did it. But I'm fighting it on three fronts, right? Female, black, and a Haitian American. Going to a meeting with a female white counterpart to meet a white gentleman at a higher level, and I am the higher level professional, but he reaches his hand out to shake the white female's hand first. Luckily, I have good company, and most of the fields in my life are like, no, she's the one that's, and that's when I'm like, yeah, that's right. And then slowly extend the hand and give them that little bit of pressure to let them know, let's not let that happen again. Right? So how do you even prepare a girl for something like that? So
talk about it.
Right. You have to speak to power. It's in everything. The eye contact. We can make eye contact too. We almost have to. We can shake that hand and shake it so that they know that we are present. Right? Little things like that. And to be honest, I'm not even sure I was taught that. I knew I had to do it to be taken. So can I teach that? So how much of it can we actually even affect? All we can do is lead by example, especially when they're looking at you with those big bright eyes, like, what are you? Where'd you come from? Like, that's why I refer to myself like a chocolate unicorn. When do you see a chocolate unicorn? Like, you're like, you want to go catch it, or you want to figure out how they became that chocolate unicorn. And I was like, I'll tell you how. This is what we're going to do. So,
yeah, so not the exact same experience that Neirda has had, but similarly, and I heard someone in the audience responding to what Neirda said by saying it starts at home. It starts with how you're raised, right? So I'll just share a similar kind of experience. So in my 38 years in the Department of Defense, right, a couple of my last postings, one of them was I was in Stuttgart, Germany, and I was at the U.S. Forces Africa Command. And, I'm there with a 4-star general. He's the leader of the command, and all of his staff, his J2 intelligence guy, his logistics guy, they're the decision-making body right in the command. I'm sitting there. I am absolutely the only woman in that room. Absolutely. In, 2015, I'm the only woman at that table. How am I the only woman at that table? From both angles, right? On one side, you'd say, why aren't there more? But why me? Why am I there? And I do think it goes to how you're raised and what you're taught. And I think I have reflected on it many times, and I really think the fact that I even got to that kind of a position and was able to be credible in that room was because I had parents who never told me that there was something I couldn't do. Never. And I had elementary school teachers who never told me that there was something that I couldn't do or succeed at. And then I was fortunate enough in the state of Maryland to have early first supervisors who never told me that there was something that I couldn't do. But how many people have that experience? Very, very few. But I think that is just the societization, right? The fundamental things that we're told to believe results in people being in those rooms, people being in those fields, people having that confidence.
Okay, so before we go to our wrap-up and takeaways, any other questions from the... Oh, boy, see, now we have a landslide.
You didn't have a chance to talk about everything, but health is such a key issue, including mental health. We talk about abortion, but we talk about women not being able to work because they have health problems. We don't have... I'm not going to give you a speech, but... You talked about the citizen petition. I have petitions outside for Medicaid expansion. Again, we got 67% or 57%. We needed 60%. We could have gotten more, but, there was stuff that went on. So we have new rules, so we cannot collect the petitions and send them out to you, but we can distribute them. On the table, there are petitions, and there are stamped, self-addressed envelopes. So please, when you go, before you leave, please take it. And if you have an organization, take some with you. I have lots of them. And please, we need to get that so that women, especially with the new rules and making health so much harder now with the big, beautiful budget bill, this is a way that, right now, Medicaid here in Florida, you have to have 1/3 of the minimum poverty level to even be eligible. That's like nothing. So this would expand it to people who are at and above minimum level to be access health care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, and you actually took one of the takeaways, which is to be engaged and to get involved and to understand what the opportunities are in whether it's citizen-led initiatives, voting, conversations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think while the next person's coming up, I think healthcare affects, just because we are often caregivers, it disproportionately affects women because it's not just are we sick, is our kid sick, right? Is our mother sick, is our whatever, yeah.
Well, and even menopause. Like, is it real? Is it not? Like, I love all of the conversation.
It's pretty real.
It's real. It is. Ask my husband. He will say absolutely. But, like, normalizing that it's real, because forever it was like, oh, it's in your imagination, or it's across the board.
Hello, I'm from the Loveland Center. We provide services to adults that have disabilities in Sarasota County and beyond, and I just want to share a testimony of the power of having women in office. So I believe it's about 5 years ago now, we had a vision for building housing. because we were originally just an adult day program. And we kept saying, gosh, if they could live right next to the adult day program and then just come over for their activities, and if we could build this, wouldn't that be amazing? And then we had a local state representative who came and she toured Loveland. And she said, this has really touched my heart, and I'm going to fight for you. And then what she did was she advocated for Loveland in Tallahassee, locally, and she fought for us because women's issues were so important to her, and because she had that background, and because she had that background as a woman. And we actually were able to secure enough funding to build 90 apartments. And we could not have done that without her. We could not have done that without having a woman representing our issues and bringing that perspective. And now we're actually building phase 2. So we're building even more housing, and actually a portion of it is going to be for Florida's nonprofit workforce, who are women, and it's going to be affordable housing for them. And none of this would have been possible without a woman in office. So I just think that it's so, so important that we have women, because then our issues are represented and then change can happen. So I just wanted to share a testimony of how that has really changed our life and how important it is.
Thank you. Okay, last question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi,
I feel like there's preaching. I love it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Fallon, and I am 27, transparently, and I'm seeing something among my generation and the generation under mine that's becoming very prevalent, and that is the radicalization of young men online. That is, it's not cute. It's happening in spaces with men commentators such as Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, who are seeing more in the news aligned with some not great policy as well. And I think that also contributes to domestic violence to women, but it also is contributing to these men's politics, and they are married to women, and they have women in their lives that are influenced by them. And I recently, in November, October, I phone banked for the election. And when speaking to women on the phone, they were sharing, oh, well, I'm gonna vote for Kamala. And they'd kind of say it quietly as if they were scared that their husband in the next room would hear them. Or sometimes their husband would hear them, and they would say, no, you're not. And I'm curious, is this cyclical? Is this something that I can anticipate seeing for the rest of my life? Or is this something that, we can contribute to stopping in some way or influencing women to feel more freedom in the polls?
Scott, I feel like this is right up your alley.
Well, I'll start. Others might have thoughts. The radicalization of men, it's not just young men online, is definitely a big issue. That gets us into the impact of the internet and misinformation and disinformation, which is huge, the politicization of everything. I think some of that is beyond it, but it is an issue in families. I would say one thing is getting out of our silos. When Ashley first talked to me about this talk today, I was a little bit hesitant, much as I love Ashley, because I said, are we just basically preaching to the converted? Because preaching to the converted is cool, and we can all empower each other, but are we also, to continue my religious metaphor, are we also being missionaries? Are we getting out there with other people? Are we understanding what their fears and issues are and why they're taking these more misogynist perspectives? We have to understand why to influence them. We have to get out and work with other people. You cannot just stay in the silo, whether it's political or gender. I'll give you a couple of examples. Our Through Women's Eyes, I inherited it. It's been around for 27 years. It's wonderful. But some years ago, I realized that we were basically showing our films to the same group of very loyal women. That's great, but how are we getting outside that? How are we? If we code something as women's, I guarantee you men will not come. These are general issues. We've changed the name. We're now Real Equals. Okay, we've tried to make it something that's more accessible. There's some misunderstandings that gender equality is an us versus them. We have to change that. Gender equality helps everyone. It helps everyone. I cannot say that enough. We cannot make this an us against them, or we will not be successful over the long term. Men have a lot of issues. Many men would be happy to get out of their prescribed gender box just as much. Male suicides are 4 times women's suicides. Think about that. That's not a happy group of people. So we all need to help each other as a society. So it is not an us versus them. I think we also have to understand that people have a couple of mistaken beliefs. They think that gender equality means men and women are going to be the same and that it will erase all our differences. And that bothers people. They don't like that. It does not erase all our differences. It just means equality. It doesn't mean the same. And many people also have a mistaken belief of how much is nature, biology, and how much is socialization. Yes, we do differ biologically, and we are also socialized. So we have to try to understand people's mistaken beliefs and build trust and break down those fears if we're going to change people one by one by one. So get out of the silo.
Well, I think there are cycles, to answer your question, right? I do think that there are cycles. And, people say it all the time, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? I just reflect, especially today, the 26th of August, that it took 78 years in the suffrage movement for women to get the right to vote. And it took 41 years of submitting the piece of legislation for the 19th Amendment to be submitted every single year in Congress for it to happen. So I think part of it is persistence. Part of it is not being afraid that something is hard and pressing forward with it regardless. So, we can have a dim view of some of the things that are happening right now, but and there are some very troubling things happening. But I think in the long term, if people are persistent, it shouldn't take that long, but you'll get there. And I think that that's the mindset that we have to have, is that we are going to hold the ground. We are not going to back down. And if we have to do it 41 times or we have to do it 78 years in a row, we just keep pushing.
And to back up on what Terri just said, people who know me know that I don't quote Tucker Carlson, the conservative commentator, very often. But he said something very profound recently that struck me. We are a representative democracy in which we elect people to work on our behalf. They work for us. We own this country. We're shareholders. We're not just passing through. We're not renting it. We own it. So if we own it, it's up to us to manage it.
I know. There we go. So what I'm going to do for METV is kind of wrap us up, and then if you've got other questions, because I knew that we would have no trouble filling our space. Some of the things that we talked about that I just want to make sure to highlight: get involved, get engaged, educate yourself. We're going to share the websites of all of us. Leanne, I feel like you have a wonderful opportunity to volunteer and share as another civil engineer. I had the opportunity to participate in a pilot for a book circle that the Patterson Foundation's doing locally called The New Civic Path Forward. And it's bringing people together to talk about what we want for community and encouraging us to move away from all of the fringe, because the fringe has the microphone. And I think that if we took a poll right now, we would probably agree on what we saw as opportunities that we want for our community and our people. And I think getting out of silos, being willing to talk and build bridges, so then we get greater understanding and respect for each other is one. Any other takeaways, ladies?
Start early. Start early, start early, start early. A lot of the things in the womb, a lot of the attitudes and beliefs, systems are built by people. Start with people early. If you don't have children at home, you have grandchildren, you have children who have children, start early.
It takes a village. I know we always joke, especially when I see a student or a child misbehave. In Haitian culture, everyone has the right to discipline that child. Okay? So if you get in trouble at school, you may have experienced that discipline maybe 5 or 6 times on your way back to the house, because all of us. So if you have the opportunity to, to speak something positive or show or a teaching moment, take it, because it takes a village.
I think my takeaway, or my last word is, We have to be experts about these things. I can talk about the SAVE Act, but it scares me that 99% of people I run into don't even know what it is and don't know the threat that it poses. And my concern is that if we don't have the subject matter expertise, and not just in a couple of nerds who are sitting in the corner who obsess about it, if we as a society, not you, it was over there, they're over there. Over there.
I feel attacked.
If we're not talking about it, if we don't know enough about it to be talking to our neighbors and our friends and our families about these issues, if we're not talking to our elected representatives, nothing's going to change. And that's my concern, is that you talk about any of the issues that we've addressed today. If we don't know enough about it, if we don't make ourselves smart enough about it so that we can carry a conversation credibly in a room, and we're not having those conversations with our officials, nothing is going to change.
Well, and again, thanks to METV, everyone in this room is going to get a recording of this. You can share with people, encourage people to, I think, educate themselves is a big piece of it. And I want to thank all of you. You have been fantastic. I continue to learn and be inspired by you. So thank you. Thank you for you all coming out and braving the weather. And again, Goodwill Industries, thank you for your support of today, and the Bishop Parker Foundation. And we're going to wrap it, but then, ma'am, we'd love to hear your question.
So anybody have an idea what the number one, they do these gender equality rankings across the globe. It's called the Global Gender Gap. Anybody idea what the top country is, which is not parity? Nobody is 1 for 1, but the top country close? I know. Iceland. Iceland consistently. Finland, Norway, the Scandinavian countries all rank in the top. The U.S. is currently 42nd in the globe. So, and many countries across the globe, every continent, are above us. Nobody is actual parity. Iceland does have many more political elected officials who are female. Again, they don't have parity, but they are the top. If anybody wants to see the rankings, there's a fascinating global report that dives into this that's publicly accessible. I'm happy to share it with people. It's very interesting stuff.
We'll include that link. And I think it goes for when there's more female representation, childcare is better, the family leave is better, so there's lots of quality of life indicators that increase, and that's why that increasing that representation is important.
These are facts, then this is what should be, when somebody says a statement like that, then you can say, there are societies in the world where when all that is met, women are represented.
And then the societies do better. I want to stress that. The societies with gender equality, in general, they tend to do better on many, many other indicators, which is a good thing.
All right. Thank you very much.